Okay, we're going to call the 931st meeting and the first budget workshop of the year to order. Roll call.
Kelly.
Here.
Shannon Lugden.
Here.
Katie Lavasser. David Susi. Tanya Rosen.
Here.
Toby Jandro. Sarah Ashley.
Here.
And our two student reps are here.
We have a couple of adjustments to the agenda under new business. A4 new hires, we're going to remove that recommendation. And also because of the low attendance, we're going to remove new business E, the executive session, to discuss contract negotiations with the Northern Rostic Education Association. Looks like there's no public participation signed up, so approval of minutes. It's up to you, ladies.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. Motion to approve the minutes.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Tanya.
Sorry, maybe delayed.
And then our financial statements from January.
Is there anything we need to know, Lucy?
It's straightforward. This time of year, it's just regular expenses. We have had no surprises.
Okay.
So everything's in line.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve the financial report for January.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye. So I'm trying to find my notes and all my paperwork here.
Well, we put you on the spot
Yes.
last minute, so we don't blame you.
Okay.
So we'll move on to 6 presentations, and we'll start with the annual Gifted and Talented Student Council trip.
So it's been several years that we've had the Gifted and Talented Student Council kind of merge in a trip for students. We do have Mr. Dorman and Ms. Jamie Pelletier here, as well as some students that would like to talk to you about the last trip, I believe, and then talk about what's coming up next. I'll share my screen, Tanya.
Okay.
Actually, Tanya, I'm going to turn you towards the camera, to the screen, because right now I can't share my screen.
Okay.
All right. All right. Go ahead, girls.
So this November we went to San Antonio for a trip, and yeah.
I'll let you come click.
Okay.
So one of our activities was the Alamo, and this is where we engaged in a guided tour, and we delved into the rich history and the historical figures central to the history and revolving around the landmark.
And those are some pictures, and then there's also pictures here of us with the figures.
So we also went on a city bus tour where students embarked on a fun, entertaining city tour, immersing themselves in the historical landmarks that define San Antonio's significance in American history. It's a really cool tour that you just get to explore the city because you can't see everything, so this gets you to see everything, the whole city. Then we went to the Towers of America. Students had a fun night exploring the Towers of America and enjoying the beauty of San Antonio cityscape. It was really cool to see everything. It was like much obviously elevated perspective, and it was really pretty.
The Natural Bridge Caverns tour. Students had the opportunity to explore the largest natural commercial caverns in all of Texas on a guided tour. We learned about the historical significance behind the caves and how each rock formation was created. The pictures really don't do this one justice, but it was really cool in the moment, just being there. So, yeah.
Then we went to the Japanese tea garden, where students took a peaceful stroll through the Japanese tea gardens and got lost in the history and beauty of the scenery. It just goes to show, like, how pretty and the different, like, features that different places have.
This was a fun one. We went to a rodeo, and it was super cool to experience, and like we don't have that culture around here. So we watched bull riding, and in some cases we weren't sure to laugh or cry. And then there was like dancing afterwards, and it was a really fun night.
Then we went to the San Antonio missions. Students received an in-depth explanation of the religious, military, cultural, and agricultural history of San Antonio by visiting several of the San Antonio missions across the city.
This just gave us like a way deeper perspective into San Antonio's history, and it was quite an experience.
Some student highlights. Along with learning about history and the culture of San Antonio, students got to enjoy the art, sports, and food, and the company of their peers. So the river walk was obviously beautiful, and it was just great to experience that, really. The Republic of Texas restaurant, I mean, there's some good food there.
And we got a band to come sing to us.
Oh yeah, we got a band for free. Oh wait.
No, we had to pay.
The NBA game, honestly, was cool. I mean, I'm a basketball player, so I really like that. So I don't know if everybody else liked that. The San Antonio Museum of Art, I mean, it was great. It was beautiful. Everything was great about that. And that's it.
This trip provided a comprehensive educational experience combining history, culture, and natural wonders to enrich students' understanding. And as a school, we thank all the participants, organizers, and sponsors for contributing to this educational journey.
And our next trip, we want to go to Seattle, Washington. I think that's it. Any questions about our trip? Good?
How many students attended that trip?
23. Yeah.
How many boys?
I think
Two?
Where are they?
they're not here.
I know, right?
So who goes on this trip?
Student council, 12th and 11th grade,
Okay.
and also the gifted and talented that's in her program, so that's 9 to 12. And that depends on how many she has in the program year from year.
Yep.
So.
And it also, when we first started doing this together, collaborating, you would come with us. It was an ARGT, it was in Aroostook County. All the schools in the county would go on a trip, and we'd all, 15 or 16 directors would work together. We could only take 3 or 4 students from each school, which was kind of limiting. And then one time, the very last time we'd gone to New York City, I invited Doug along, and that's in his wheelhouse, of course, and we just said, why are we just having so few of our students doing this when we could collaborate? And we saw there was a huge overlap between the GT kids and kids on student council. So it was just like, perfect blend.
And just one more thing is that I basically do it all myself. So companies are not making money off of our students. So therefore,
Right.
we can offer a lot more opportunities to our students than having someone makes that good percentage off the trip and stuff. So that's one of the reasons why we kind of do it ourselves. And more of a benefit to them.
Much bigger bang for our buck.
What do you look for, or how do you find what to bring them to?
That's a good question. Usually what happens is that we have a meeting, we talk to them, see what their interest is in. To be honest with you, Seattle wasn't on my radar, but the students mentioned that, okay? And we're like, okay, let me play around with it, see what I can come up with. And I really enjoy creating these trips. So it's kind of like a video game for me, so I spend a lot of time, and then, we bring in a lot of stuff that, You know, I never even thought about like taking students to a rodeo. You know, that was really a cultural experience for them. You know, something they haven't seen before, and especially like they mentioned the dancing. Everybody in that community, it was in a rural area where we were, everybody was dancing from as soon as you could walk all the way up to senior citizens. So that was a really nice thing to see. You know, I don't think we see that in Fort Kent.
And rigor, we're looking for rigor. We want museums, art museums, we try to rotate. Oh no, we were looking at Atlanta, it was the CDC museum. We thought would be an awful great experience for them to do something just very different in the aftermath of COVID, to understand these reports, where are they coming from, what's going on here. But we're always looking for a level of rigor. We try to do some background prep with them to, as much as we can. So going in, they're not just, oh, what is this? They have some background going into these trips.
What do you guys want to see in Seattle, Washington?
There's a flight museum, which I'm kind of the one, me and Quinn kind of brought up Seattle because it's just kind of different. It's far away. It's definitely on the other side of America. So,
I'm going to add this too, if I may. The public transit too, when we're in New York, when we're in Boston, stuff like that. He's the man, I just follow. I'm the caboose in the back, but he teaches them the public transit systems. Sometimes we'll jump on a city bus and ride around the city and just get a view from that perspective. It's cheap, and kids we've had in the past come back. And we've got Jake Jandros, my poster boy at Boston. After coming to Boston with us, he felt comfortable enough to bring his parents back to Boston. And he's been multiple times since, and that's our aim here, just to get the kids out, see that there's a big world beyond Fort Kent, and you can always come back, but it's nice to explore what's out there.
I will say, I will piggyback off that. As a parent, my children did, some of Mr. Dorman's trips. Everyone knows my son's a wheelchair user, and it was an eye-opening experience on one of our trips in New York City to try to find all the access to wheelchair accessibility when we're running for, sometimes literally running to catch a train, and everyone's going up the escalator. We've got to go find that elevator. It's kind of daunting, but since then, my son's independent now, and he gets on the train in Freeport, and he goes down to Boston, watches a game, and these are all things that he did because he got enough experience through these school trips.
You got to see where and how to.
Yeah, so we gave him the confidence to be able to do that.
Nice.
It just shows you there's more than Fort Kent, and you can get all these experiences, and it's important to do that whenever you're young, to have that on your back.
You're right, and you're right. There's more than Fort Kent, but not a lot of schools like Fort Kent do these student trips.
Yes.
So this is pretty awesome for you guys.
Are we expecting any more information about the Seattle trip, or are we just motioning to approve it now?
Usually we don't have, it's not all into detail at this stage because we're talking about in November.
Okay.
So usually the trip we're looking at, this one probably about 5 days. We're flying out of Presque Isle. We try to go to Presque Isle as much as possible to support the county and the airport. And then we start looking at the attractions, and then I start talking to the students, and we put it together. So if you would like, we can come back with more of a detailed plan, but usually at this stage we don't, just because of planning stages. And a lot of it will adjust as we go in terms of what we're actually going to do when we're there. Because I do not want to make reservations until probably like 2 months out in terms of attractions.
What about for costs? Is it roughly about the same for every trip, or?
Usually, yeah, it kind of works out that way. It depends on what you get for the flight. Okay, hotel rooms are about the same usually. Everything else is pretty much the same except for the flight.
Yes.
So that's your driving force, is getting the flight first.
But for you to go ahead and start, it would be nice if we could approve the trip today.
Yeah, I'm trying to get these trips to be approved a little bit. yeah, I would really like to get these trips to start approved later, year out. That would give us enough time, and also give students enough time to start saving some money up as well.
I'll make a motion to approve the annual Gifted and Talented Student Council trip for 2024-25.
I'll second.
All in favor?
What was the date again? Do they have like a definite date?
It will be potato harvest, correct? Or no?
Okay.
No, wait,
After
hold
the
on,
French
Tanya.
trip. After the French trip.
After the French trip, so
Yes.
it's in the fall. It is
In
in the fall.
November.
In
Are
November.
they gonna be missing, are students missing school?
How many days of school do
We're
they
looking
miss?
at 3 days of school.
3 days of school.
Yeah. And usually and that's the other thing too, is we let the teachers know ahead of time, in terms of the days that they're gonna be missing. And, usually we try to coordinate it with the Veterans Day, so they would have 1 day off. Because of the French students coming, we had to postpone our trip a little bit to accommodate that. So that's why it's 3 days. So.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't know if that was said earlier, I missed that part.
No,
That's all right.
okay.
So are we all
Yeah.
Aye.
all good? Okay.
Thank you, girls.
Thank you.
Next up for presentations, Mr. Shu.
I have a slideshow. Can I
Okay.
just connect there?
Go for it. I think I have to disconnect first.
I apologize, I'm hobbling around, and I would normally stand up and present to you. But when you lose your ankle, you also lose your hands. So I'm going to sit here if you don't mind. But I do have a brief slideshow to share with you about something that's happening in my classroom. And I'm pretty excited about it. So I will get this set up. I should not hook it up.
Okay, no. Good catch. Oh. Yep.
Do you want me to reset it, Don?
Yeah, let me try to go again here.
Do you want to share it with me, Don, and we'll put on my...
Sure, let's not waste time.
Let's do
I
that.
pared it down from 100 slides to 10.
Okay. Thank you.
Thorough, I like it.
Yeah. Let's see.
Looks like you're gonna have to do a song and a dance.
Right?
About technology. And this is all about technology too.
An interpretive dance it is.
Not sure that's gonna work tonight.
Yes. Glad Ben's having trouble.
It's not even showing me a list of available. It was working a while ago.
I'm getting the spin wheel of death. So.
He's showing us Doug's LA trip from a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm gonna try. See if I can connect.
You need to go back to the old wire systems where you just, you know, have long wires.
Yeah,
Why don't you share it with Ben?
I did.
He did, but I know I can't get on. Oh, I'm on. That was a struggle. All right.
Ooh, yay.
All right. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I see
Okay.
it.
Don, you're on.
All right. So, can I control the slide there, or you?
You can.
Oh, wow.
Just don't read my emails.
I will not.
They'll haunt you.
Milty put out a program called Teach with Tech last spring about this time. I'm a techie, I'm a tech geek, I always have been, and I've always been jealous of STEM activities. That science and math and engineering and technology, people get to do things in their classrooms that I can't do in my English classroom. So I've always been jealous. So when Sharon Chassis sent around an email about this time last year saying that Milty was offering this Teach with Technology program that was basically open checkbook. They said, imagine having something in your classroom that's beyond what you can afford or dream, and write a grant. And so I used my English words and wrote a grant to really address some of the underachieving males that we have in our school, kids who don't want to be here, who would rather be out, you know, using their hands working. And we also stepped back from hands-on activities through COVID. Work became completely digital, and everything was online. And we really, really are cheating a bunch of kids by allowing that to continue and not requiring them to do more physical hands-on activities. So I got really amped up because this really sounded like a cool program. They said it'll be a 2-week turnover. So I went big and I looked up a Glowforge Pro, which is a laser cutter engraver. It cuts metal, it cuts wood. Well, it doesn't really cut metal, it'll engrave metal. It can do cardboard, leather, all kinds of different things. Really got excited about it. It's a $7,000 machine. And then 2 maker-bought 3D printers. And I really did a little bit of research about how you can implement something like this in the English classroom, and found a lot out there that I had not been addressing. And I just thought it fit perfectly. So I wrote my grant, submitted it on April 3rd, 2023. They said 2-week turnaround. So of course I waited. Like that same day I was like, they're gonna email me back, either laughing, saying this is a joke, we don't do stuff like this in English, go back to work with your pencil and paper and computer, or they would approve it. So I waited, and I waited, and nothing. And so I was thinking I could plan over the summer. If I got this grant in May, I could use the summer to research and really figure out how it would fit what I do. No word. In fact, I emailed them a couple times, they ignored my emails. And in the fall, when nothing had happened, I called in the big guns, Sharon, and she sent them an email. And it was shortly after that I was approved on September 5th, 2023, fully funded, $13,000 worth of equipment for my English classroom. And it was exciting because within a week, Lucy Tabor and Beth Gaillon had that stuff in my classroom.
Nice.
So just to show you the efficiency at the state level and the efficiency at the local level are two different things. And the kids saw this happening. The kids saw this stuff coming into my classroom. And they're the ones who came to me. And in fact, the first kid that walked through my door said quite loudly, "Mister, I want to 3D print a gun." And I said, "You can't do that in school, get out." He said, no, I've read a book. And the gun is for hunting, it's for survival, it's for sustenance, it's for culture. And he basically told me the book report in his justification for printing what turned out to be a very small plastic gun as my first project with a kid. And he presented it to the class and he did a wonderful job. Other ideas that we came up with were like recreating settings in a novel. I've got a young man who reads fantasy novels and he visualizes the settings, the castles, and the structures, and he's been building pieces on my 3D printers. I had a young boy come in, I don't even teach him, but he said, I read how George Washington lived and died, and I want to make a board game. And I got to print out all these pieces and cut out all these little houses and motels and things like that. So he came up with a game called Washingtonopoly. And I stayed with him after for 3 or 4 nights to really pull this together. And these are some pictures of him printing the pieces and making the board game. And he used a 24-inch printer, a 3D printer, and the laser cutter engraver in 3 nights to get this project done. I was so proud of him. Vocabulary, we're using it to make tactile words, which are kind of cool because we try to build vocabulary, but it's tough sometimes to really engage students. And one of the things we've done is to actually print the words out. That really helps with spelling and actually touching, feeling, manipulating the words. So we're looking at this as a way of improving vocabulary. Poetry publication, I'll show you a little example of that in a second. And even senior projects. The seniors do a lot of brochures. If you've ever come out of senior projects, you come out with a lot of brochures. But I said, how about, I went into every senior class and I said, how about if you make a keychain? You engrave a keychain with crisis numbers on them so that when we walk around with our keys, we always have access to help should we need it. A brochure gets, onto the passenger seat of my truck and it gets lost and ultimately in the garbage, but keychain. So kids have started to rethink the way they make their senior products in 3D formats. Last week, the week before last, students had to memorize a poem in my English class, 25 lines or more. And one girl was just a mess. She couldn't do it. But she said, I need to fidget, I need to move. She printed herself a fidget on the 3D printer. Here she is. And she knocked it out of the ballpark. She brought her fidget up when she recited, but she really did a great job. She remembered all the words because while she was memorizing, she was fidgeting. And so she fidgeted as she recited, and it was really cool. Here is Sadie Karn's American Dream poem engraved on a piece of wood. We actually 3D printed the tripod it's standing on too. There's some words up there, a fidget, there's some game pieces. So again, we're working at the top of Bloom's taxonomy when we use this stuff. It's creation, it's knowledge utilization if you're looking at Marzano's taxonomy. We've got increased engagement. Kids are slowly getting into this stuff. Again, it came to us in September, so it was after our window of opportunity to really plan it and integrate it. So the integration is kind of ongoing. Deeper understanding as they really dig into content to find the meaning. Improved quality of the work. If you're going to engrave something, it better be spelled right, is what I tell them, because it's forever. And higher scores on vocabulary, reading assessments. They're really reading deeper for meaning and trying to find connections in their reading that they can actually visualize and then create in a digital world, but ultimately have something physical, hands-on that they're doing in their English class. And it's pretty exciting. And word has kind of gotten out that we have this. So, you know, we're doing some work with the Outdoor Center right now. We've done some work with the university. And to kind of show our appreciation for the work that you guys do, we've printed you each a lanyard, a Ways of the Warrior lanyard. I didn't do one for the kids because they're going to earn one anyway as we go. I'm sorry, I apologize. But we have one for each of you, which shows you not only, you know, the detail with which you can create something on these machines, but our appreciation for all you do as school board members. So, could you play Vanna White for me? All right. And we've got one more in here. So thank you. And again, if you ever want to see our stuff, come on in. It's really great to have these opportunities. And it's just as fun being a learner alongside the students as it is to be the teacher who has to guide them through this stuff. So, thank you.
Thank you,
Do
Don.
you have any questions?
Thanks, Dawn.
You're welcome.
Don or Sharon, do you know how many awards were given across the state?
You could go and check online. Yeah, they were very slow in responding.
Okay, great.
But no, I don't know exactly.
That's it.
I know that Mitch Daigle actually got one.
Mitch Daigle got one.
Thank
you.
And as soon as I got the grant approval, I signed up for the Milty. Milty has a conference every year called Actum.
Oops,
where
that's not me.
technology coordinators, IT people, and just classroom teachers who use technology meet in Augusta. And this equipment is just starting to be integrated into schools, but we are definitely, you know, pardon my pun, but on the cutting edge of technology. And this is right up the career pathways gateway. So kids who are going into technology or graphic design or 3D design, this is really a great way to reach them.
That's awesome.
Nice work.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Dawn.
Goodness, it's beautiful.
Tanya, we have yours, and we'll make sure you get that.
Yes.
All right, awesome.
It's hard to move on from that one. Next up, superintendent.
So I only have a few updates for you. The first one is in regards to our board member representation for Ward 1 and Ward 4. We currently have, Ward 1 is represented by Kelly, and Ward 4, Sarah is one of the at-large Ward 4 people. And papers, I was notified that papers were not taken out for both of those wards, which means that in order for someone to get elected to either Ward 1 or Ward 4, they would have to be, they would have to do a write-in campaign, if you will, in order for you know, somebody to get selected. Write-in is the only way to get somebody voted at this point in time. So I want to be respectful of Kelly and Sarah and their wishes not to run back, but we also have to plan as a board on how we're going to proceed, because anybody can get written in, and anybody can get written in. So that being said, I do believe that Ward 1 has somebody interested in the position as a write-in candidate. And I don't think it's our business as a board to promote or not promote any of that, but I do know that with regards to Ward 4, it may be that, you know, we need to make some suggestions, and then people can be approached and then hopefully accept whether or not they'd like to have their names thrown in. So I don't think it's anything for us to solve tonight, but I do think that if you can think about potential board members for both 1 and 4 that may be interested, I'd be all ears, and I would be certainly fine with contacting anyone or asking somebody to contact them and see if they're interested in that write-in process. And I do believe the elections are
Heard March 5,
March 5.
June 4,
I was
10.
gonna say, I have it written down.
March 5,
somewhere.
right? It's the day
March
after
5, yeah.
Yeah.
your last board meeting. 'Cause your last board meeting is March 4.
Mm-mm.
No,
No?
March 25.
Oh, never mind. Is this your last board meeting? Right,
So one more board meeting, I was told.
yeah, I thought there was one more.
March
board
25 are coming. And then after that, that's it.
Okay.
That's weird.
That's what I was
Why would
told
it be
from
after the-
Angela.
Okay.
as well.
I'll have to reach out to just verify that. So, nothing for us to solve today, but it will be a write-in campaign for 2 of our vacancies.
So like somebody, two people, like one person's name could be written in twice and they would
Correct.
serve.
I thought it was 10. I thought it took 10.
I don't know.
But
That's
I
interesting.
don't know where that came from, but I thought it was 10.
I do know that it's been important for, at least for Ward 1, historically, that ward has always been represented by somebody from St. Francis or St. John.
Mhm.
And I do believe that's important because a Fort Kent resident could get elected to that ward if they live on the line of St. John Road to whatever. So that's to be considered.
The opportunity for Zoom was more, it would be easier for some of us.
Yeah,
I know for myself personally,
yeah.
but I understand,
It is tough.
you know, the
And
circumstances.
a lot of you have
but-
young families too,
Mm.
and that's tough. It is tough. So just food for thought. If you think of any names, just share them with me and I can try to do something.
So what happens if it doesn't? Like,
I-
if it is a 10 name minimum?
I believe the town would have to
Appoint.
appoint somebody at that point in time. Just like if there was
And they can-
somebody who resigned.
So the townspeople would have to call every household and say, do you want to do it? Do you want to do it?
Pretty much.
And it would be appointed for 1 year
Right.
until the next election, and then whoever, you
Yeah.
take out papers.
So all the people watching, if you want to be a school board member, just send me an email or just start a write-in campaign and good luck. Any questions on that? The second update I have is just an update on Recovery High School. I did notify you last meeting that we were very much in the preliminary aspect of looking at this, and since then, Mr. Karen Brooke Netto, who is an instructor at Alternative Education, and myself, we met with representatives from UMFK on February 1. Had further conversations with them, and then we had a meeting on Tuesday, February 13, with some regional partners, representatives from Fish River Rural Health, Northern Maine Medical Center, Department of Corrections, Department of Health and Human Services, Aroostook Mental Health Center, AMHC, all at that meeting. And we had some good, healthy conversations, and at the end, it was obvious that we had a lot of support from community-based entities that felt this was really a step in the right direction. There were some really good points that were brought up from a couple of agencies that made us rethink some of the initial thoughts. One of them being, is a residential model going to fit for all students? Or is it going to be a deterrent for some? So does it have to be all or none? And so I think we're going to have discussions about whether or not the residential piece can be just an option for them versus being recommended. Also, the Department of Corrections, there are some rules around specific to students who are in the system, for lack of a better term, and what that all looks like for residential pieces for those students as well. So we're gonna have to iron out those things, but all in all, it was really good conversations. Mr. Karen did reach out also to our St. John Valley delegation of legislators. So Troy Jackson, Roger Albert, and Austin Terrio have all been contacted, and we're looking to see if we can meet with them sometime soon just to start pitching this idea and seeing if we have some support from them and where this can go as far as possible funding from the state of Maine. So we'll keep you updated as we know more. Questions on that one? You do have reports from Mr. Coletta, Mr. Neto, Ms. Jill Kelly, and Ms. Stacy Sear. And I believe they're here if you have any questions for them.
Could we get an update on Robbie about spring concert? I saw that in his report.
Mr. Neto, did you hear that?
Yeah.
Do we have an update on spring concert?
Sam was still waiting to hear back from the college on that June 10 date.
Did you hear that, Tanya?
No, I didn't. Sorry.
They're waiting to hear back from the college on the June 10th date. And
Okay,
that's where
June 10 is also a school board meeting.
There we go.
we'll have to look at that. We'll
that
make
means
sure
we
there's
all
no
go to
we'll make sure there's no conflict.
Okay.
All right?
So
Go to
is
the
this
concert.
considered
Maybe we can
a
go
night
take our meeting to the
concert?
concert.
This will be the
Perfect. I like that idea.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that.
But I am very happy to hear that we are trying at least. So I appreciate that.
We don't know until you try.
Exactly.
Any other questions for administrators? All right, moving on.
Yep.
Committee reports, we do have second read revised policies for negotiations. We have HA, which is our negotiations goals, priorities, objectives. And this just is a real short blurb that says we are going to follow the Municipal Public Employees Labor Relations Law. And that was the recommendation from the Maine School Management and the Policy Committee. And then the second one is our HF, Board Negotiating Agents. We did add a sentence there that a contracted service for a lead negotiator may be utilized. And then we also said, in preparation for negotiations, the board shall meet in executive session to discuss labor negotiations to set goals and desired outcomes for those negotiations. Those were the additions to those policies.
I move to approve the second read and adopt the revised policies HA and HF.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Here, I.
Thank you. Under items of business, old business, last meeting, we had taken the comprehensive emergency management approval to you, and then it was suggested we table to allow the board members to review them. So when we shared out the materials, and you should have had links to those plans. As I indicated in the notes, really it's just an update of contact information. The only addition is the section on behavioral threat assessment management that was added to page 37 on the FKES plan and 38 on the CHS plan. And the threat assessment protocols are essentially what we do as a school if we have a student who is in crisis, who has made dangerous threats, and how our school responds based on our recent training for SISTAG, which is the training that we conducted last spring and this summer. And both of our schools have a trained team in that process. They also have access to an online platform where they can collaborate on that threat assessment. I think I explained to you guys back in the day, like 2 or 3 years ago and before that, you would essentially have one person making a threat assessment. It was usually a social worker. And that social worker, that's a lot of pressure on one person to make a comprehensive diagnosis of whether or not a threat is substantiated or where it's transient. So with this approach, you not only have a social worker, you have a school nurse, you have an administrator, you have multiple people who are viewing this from different lenses so that they know, maybe what's going on with grades. They might need to know what's going on with the health. They might need to know what's going on social emotionally. So you have a lot of different eyes on the process. So that process has been added to our plan. and that was a recommendation by main school management to add that to that plan. Toby did mention that he does want mention of this somewhere in policy, so I'll have to figure out where it would fit best in policy to make a mention about our behavioral threat assessment management.
Now, you mentioned just a handful of people are on this committee.
Yep.
Should all staff have this training?
So
if something would happen within that classroom and they're not trained, shouldn't every?
yeah, so our staff, all staff are trained as mandated reporters. So if they see something, they have to say something. This is the team they would say something to. So it would get real clunky if you have too many hands in the pot for this type of a thing, because it's really comprehensive. You go over questions, you interview students, you do a lot of detailed work. So it's people with an invested interest, and we can also add ad hoc members. So if we want to invite a Fort Kent Police Department officer to it because this child is in the system, we'll do that. If we want to add a special ed teacher because this kid is in special ed, then we add a special ed. So we do have add-ins, but the core team is made up of, I think both schools have 6 members, which includes like I said, an administrator, a nurse, a social worker, a guidance counselor, and usually essentially that's the core team.
I like it. Are we confident in making a motion to accept this?
Yeah, yes, I am, but I want to ask something really quick. So their policies are crazy long, which makes sense. Is there like, and it seems to be the principal of the building principal, who's sort of the go-to person at each step, ultimately. So, like, are the building principals the guys that have, like, you are the people who are supposed to know this, or at least where to find pieces?
You're talking about the behavioral threat assessment management?
The whole
these,
thing.
when you click on these, they're
Yep.
like 170 pages.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, is that, who's the boss of those?
Yeah, so it's hard because the way those are set up, as far as, you know, your team of triage, for lack of a better term, that's essentially going to be very specific to like an active shooter situation where you have to have
So there's a lot of it that really is not going to come into play on a day-to-day basis.
like they have pandemic response in there.
Right.
And they had that before COVID-19. We didn't follow that plan for our COVID-19 response because it didn't apply to what that manual said. So we collaborate. There's a section on that on student death. You know, unfortunately we've had those scenarios so that we get to use past practice versus going to the manual. The manual is so that we're compliant.
Okay.
But we have our own processes for
Okay, I guess that's kind of, yeah, that answers my question.
I think the only time we would be like, your incident commander, your police lead, we would probably be for an active shooter.
Yeah.
And let's hope that's never going to be.
I move to approve the 2024 comprehensive emergency management plans for the elementary school and CHSVRMS.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Under items for information, we have no retirements, no resignations, no transfers. We removed the new hire recommendation. The individual was not accepting the position after looking it over. So we do have current openings for a school psychologist. That's been open all year. Our CHS, VRMS physical education health teacher, our dean of students, and our technology coordinator. Wanted to give you an update on what's going on with those. I'll start with dean of students because I've assumed the lead on that committee. Today the committee met and we went over the pool of applicants, and we've decided who we're going to invite for interviews, and we will be reaching out to those candidates hopefully tomorrow to invite them to an upcoming interview. So that's in play, and we hopefully will have a recommendation for you for the next meeting of this school board. Technology coordinator, I've asked Mr. Peter Karen to chair that committee. simply because there's a conflict of interest for me to serve on it, to remain impartial, so I've deferred to Mr. Karen. And he will be contacting individuals tomorrow to form a committee. He has a good idea of a good makeup of that committee, and we'll then look for reviewing applications probably the following week, and looking to interview the week after that. So that's another position that we likely have a recommendation for you for the upcoming meeting. I will say in both those positions, we have a healthy pool of candidates. As well as the physical education health teacher position, we have a healthy pool of candidates there as well. And Mr. Coletta is going to get moving on that rather soon as well. He came in to grab the pile of applications, and he's going to be putting his committee together and moving forward with that. So that's another one. You'll likely have a recommendation before next meeting. School psychologists, they don't exist anywhere, so I don't know how lucky we'll get. But we do actually have a staff member who is interested in becoming a school psychologist and has joined the University of Southern Maine's cohort. University of Southern Maine has created a cohort to fast track individuals who want to become school psychologists. It's a 3-year process. And starting next fall, they will be in their year 1, and they have solidified a mentorship with the school psychologist in Presque Isle, at Presque Isle Community High School. So maybe in the future we'll have our own homegrown school psychologist, which is awesome.
Cool.
I do want to share with the committee, because I think it's appropriate as I'm talking about these positions. No matter how much you try to make a process for hiring confidential, fair, and make it as transparent as possible while still remaining confidential, there's always going to be rumors that circulate around some of these positions. If you are privy to some of those rumors, perhaps that we've handpicked our people or who are going to take over, or you've heard that so-and-so was guaranteed a position. I promise you that no one person, including myself, or a team of administrators does that here. We have committees for every job opening we have, and it's always a committee decision on who we not only interview, but who we select. It's not based on one person's opinion or thoughts. So in the committee that I have for the Dean of Students, I do have 2 other administrators on the committee, but I also have a middle school teacher, a high school teacher, a district-wide teacher. We have a student representative, and we have a parent as well as a school board member. Sarah's serving on that committee. So we try to get a good, diverse group on the committee so that we see different points of view. So just wanted to say that as a public service announcement, that we don't peg people for positions. We every now and then we do have the fortunate opportunity to promote somebody from within with an in-house transfer when they are qualified and they are deserving of that. And case in point was last meeting when we had decided to appoint Mr. Doucette to the principal position. I think he earned that recognition. Most of the time we are interviewing even our own in-house candidates because we want to make it a fair process. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Do those committees all look the same for each of those positions?
Different committees for all those positions. So if
Okay.
any board member wants to be on the technology coordinator, please let me know. And if any school board member wants to be on the physical education health teacher, please let Mr. Coletta know.
Okay,
We do want vast representation.
absolutely.
Yeah, all right, moving on.
Next, you've got the school calendar.
So our current school calendar has our parent-teacher conference and our, and you do have copies, and I'm sorry they're not labeled current and proposed. So the current school calendar is the one that has March 7 in pink, March 8 in yellow, and April 23 in blue. That's the current school calendar. There is a workshop day that follows parent-teacher conference. We have that every year because teachers are working till 6:30 at night for parent-teacher conference. They're tired, and we try to piggyback that with a workshop day. It's a big day for them for parent-teacher conference, so we try not to have a student school day on the following day. So this year for our workshop, we were really interested in bringing in a guest speaker that a lot of our folks, Mr. Chenard shared a while ago with you that he went to the ACTIM conference, which is the technology conference for Maine. ACTIM this year, their keynote speaker was somebody who came in and talked about AI in education. And Ms. Sharon Chassie saw him as well, and they were just blown away. His insight to how schools need to not only learn about AI, but also develop systems to try to support students in this big endeavor, and also our educators. We just felt that now is the right time to bring in someone like that and share the cost between the 3 Valley Unified School Districts. Unfortunately, the guest speaker was not available on March 8th. So the proposal was for March 15, which is the following week. Of course, whenever I get a calendar change approved, I have to go to Madawaska, here, and SAD 33 and have it approved by all 3 school boards. Unfortunately, one school board has to approve first, and one has to go second, and one has to go third, and based on the way this all unfolded, you're the last. Madawaska's already approved this change, and SAD 33's already approved this change. This doesn't mean that you're forced to change the calendar. It just means that if we want to collaborate with common dates, my recommendation would be that we delay parent-teacher conference to the 14th, which is a week later, and have the workshop on 15th, so we can have the guest speaker come in and do a comprehensive workshop for all of our teachers on that date. So that's one proposal, and I do apologize that I believe that changes to the lunch schedule have already gone out prior to your approval of this. That was an oversight. I try to be very careful with each school district and say, okay, your school district has approved this, but yours has not yet. So this is not an approved change for yours yet until your board says it is. Unfortunately, when momentum moves and things start to get played,
School lunches.
yeah, things move a little bit faster sometimes than they should. So I do apologize to parents who received a school lunch change without an actual calendar change, which with your approval I'd like to do tomorrow. So you'll see on the other calendar, that pink date is moved to the 14th and the workshop is moved to the 15th. The other change I'm proposing is the early release in April. Right now it is scheduled for April 23, and I'm proposing we move it to April 8 because April 8 is the total solar eclipse that is occurring in our region. We're actually very close to the ideal spot, which is actually the Holton area. But we will have total darkness even in this region. And the timing of that places students on buses for their commute ride home to be in total darkness and possibly not prepared to stare at the eclipse if they don't have the right tools, which is those special glasses that you're supposed to look at them with. We would like to have students go home early that day, and actually every school district in Aroostook County is collaborating on this just because we want students to go experience that with their families. It's the only total eclipse they'll ever see in their lifetime in this area. So it's pretty unique. I do know that Mr. Coletta, for one, is looking at the possibility of having an after-school program for the middle high school students to possibly take a bus ride to more of the center location and have a full viewing. I think he was looking at Shin Pond, but he's not sure about the bathroom situation. Maybe Katahdin High School. So there's more to come on that. Mr. Neto also was able to secure glasses for all the district students, all Valley Unified students, so he paid for them out of pocket. I'm just kidding. No, he did. He was able to get I don't know what they're called, Mr. Nitto?
Maineclipse.org, I believe, if you go to the website.
Okay.
And they're actually going to be coming to the elementary school and the high school to do presentations on eclipses at the end of March.
So
it's a short presentation, but they're excited
Yep.
to come up, and they're going to be bringing glasses to everybody.
So each student will receive a pair of glasses?
Yeah.
Cool.
And we were actually talking about purchasing them, because it's such a big deal, but now we don't have to purchase them. They're all going to get one. And I do believe the schools are planning to have like eclipse events for the early morning of that school day, just so we can celebrate the whole thing. But we feel it's best that not to have our students on buses when the eclipse actually happens.
What time is that supposed to happen, do you know?
3:30 is totality.
But it starts a little bit earlier, right? 3:15 or so?
Yeah, it'll start getting dark, and you'll start being able to see the moon coming across before that, but total darkness will be about 3:30 in Caribou.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're supposed to just see a little sliver of light
Yeah,
where we're located.
we're still technically in the area of totality, but Frenchville is not.
Oh.
So that's how close we are to the edge.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's going to be the only total eclipse in this area in our and our children's lifetime. So it's a pretty big deal. I do know that the cities of Presque Isle and Holton are planning big things for that day. So good stuff. So those are the proposed calendar changes.
I move to approve the current school year calendar changes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Thank you. Valley Unified Budget, the reason this is coming to you is because of the change in our interlocal agreement that says major considerations in Valley Unified. In order for those to be approved by the Valley Unified Board, it has to be affirmed by each of the local school units. And the budget is probably one of the biggest factors. So Lucy will present to you what has been presented to Valley Unified.
Tanya, I emailed them to you.
Oh, okay, I'll open that right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you guys want to follow along, you can.
Again, there's a quiz.
I apologize for the small font, but. So the first part of well, we can go through that one, Shannon, is the long sheet that has yellow on it. So the Valley Unified budget is actually one of the simpler budgets to make because it's really just central office of the 3 units. And it's just the positions, the 5 positions, the superintendent, what used to be the assistant superintendent, but will be the HR director, myself, Peter Karen, and the food service director, Melanie. So those 5 positions, and I have to present it or build it the same way that I build the regular budgets by cost center. So one cost center is the Valley Unified Board and the executive administration and the central office staff, but we don't have, the only central office staff in there is myself and will be the HR director. And then if we had any expenses that pertained to the vans owned by Valley Unified, or if we had a bus or transportation owned by Valley Unified, which we don't have any expenses that are billed there. And then the food service operation, that's strictly the food service director and any expenses that she would incur, so travel, or if she needs to go to a workshop or whatnot. Those are the kinds of expenses that we have through here. The school board of Valley Unified is a very basic budget as well. In every school board, I should have a little bit of money for legal expenses in the event that something needs to be reviewed by legal, or if we're sued, or if we have something to go. And then a portion of the audit gets charged there. There's insurance for the liability and emissions insurance, and then just a few miscellaneous funds in case you need to buy books or miscellaneous items. Executive administration, that's the superintendent and Peter Kieran's area. You'll see a decrease in that section because that's where the assistant superintendent was. The HR director actually falls under regular central office services because that position will not be administrative or executive administrative level. So you'll see a decrease in the executive administration, but you'll see a slight increase in the central services portion. So salaries, benefits that pertain with those positions, and then just the expenses that belong to Valley Unified. The higher costs items are the central office financial system and the Time Clock Plus software. Those items are charged at this level because as part of an education service center, the Department of Education actually reimburses us for those costs. They also reimburse us for 55% of the superintendent's salaries or the executive director, I guess, is salaries and benefits in this section. And we also get a little bit of funding in each district, excuse me, in each district's ED 279. We all get a little bit of funding to reflect that we're part of an ESC. So this budget itself is just the central office for those 5 people. Last year's the total budget was $781,890. This year's proposed budget is $809,230. Column B, an increase of about $27,340. I have a built-in estimated increase in health insurance of about 10%. I always start with 10%. We don't get the numbers, the actual numbers in time for this to be approved. So whatever is, say the increase comes in at 5%, that 5%, the other 5% will carry forward. It's not something that we'll spend. And then in column E, you see the anticipated state revenues that offset this budget. So there's $83,169 that they contribute towards the superintendent's salary and benefits. There's $57,000 that they contribute towards the Time Clock Plus software and the financial software. So a total of $140,169 comes from the state. I anticipate being able to use some carry forward from prior years of $93,500 to bring a total amount of $575,561 that will be distributed amongst the 3 districts. How this budget works is we don't go to vote at referendum for the funds that we need. It goes back to each district's budget based on a cost share formula, and each district's budget is then voted on at referendum. So it's included in the amount that each district will bring to referendum. So the very right-hand side, the last 3 columns, show the assessments by each district. So column O, P, and Q. So column O is MSAD 27. Based on the cost share formula, it contributes 50.55% of this budget, which is a total of $290,946. Last year's contribution was $296,350. So it'll actually be a slight decrease of $5,400 for MSAD 27. MSAD 33's cost share percentage is 16.15%. And they're pretty much break even. They have a very slight increase of $241. And MSAD's cost share formula is 33.29%. And they'll have a slight decrease of $5,875. The cost share formula is calculated on this sheet. It's the one with the purple. Tanya, I believe it's called cost share and local assessments. So the top part is basically a summary of what we just saw. So your cost centers, the total budget, the carry forward, and whatnot. So that's just a summary. The middle piece shows the actual cost share formula has 50% of the amount. It's divided based on student population, and the other 50% is divided based on valuation in each town. So I do the calculations, say Madawaska has 26.99%, 97% of students, and they have 39.62% of valuation of the towns that make up the Valley Unified. So therefore, they contribute 33.29% of the total budget. And the same for MSAD 33 has 16.53% of the students, they have 15.78% of all valuations, so they contribute 16.15%. And MSAD 27 has 56.5% of students, 44.6% of valuation, so their average is 50.55%. So that's how I calculate the cost share formula. The bottom portion shows it, I break it down by towns. So you could see that Madawaska's share of the Valley Unified Budget is 33.3%. Frenchville and St. Agatha, total combined is 16.2%, but Frenchville's portion of that is 8.6%. You would see that. Is yours not print? Yeah, right here. The very bottom portion.
I'm looking here.
Over.
Yeah,
That's
like,
always
this is
on
like,
the very
that's not
right-hand side of
8%.
the bottom right, the very last column on the right. So you can see that Fort Kent pays about 35.7% of the Valley Unified Budget. New Canada pays 3%, St. Francis 3.2%, St. John 2.4%, and Wallagrass 6.2% of the Valley Unified Budget. So this budget is brought back into SAD 27's budget and gets distributed to the towns in that fashion. I have last year's cost share. There's very little change. For example, SAD 27 this year will be 50.55%. Last year was 50.52%. So there hasn't been very much movement at all. SAD 33, the reason why their difference from last year is a little bit slighter is because they had an increase in their share. They went from 15.81% last year to 16.15% this coming year. So that's why they're going to see less of a decrease, but I still was able to bring it in, so they see very little change. And then the last sheet that you have is the revenues that offset it. We've gone through it when we looked at these. It just shows that the total budget is $809,000. It's a 3.58% increase from last year in terms of the expenses. We're showing that the anticipated revenues for the executive director this year is $83,169, an increase of about $1,000 over last year. Our financial and time clock plus software is $57,000, a slight decrease from last year. And I anticipate being able to use $93,000 carry forward as compared to last year we used $55,000. So a decrease in the overall request to the town, to the districts of 1.88% from prior year.
And that's because of the carry.
That's because of the carry forward, yep. Primarily. Any questions?
It's a lot to boggle in, bring it at once.
And this is the simple one.
One thing that we were creative in when we started this, so I think you have 9 or 11 service centers across the state. Not one of them does it the same. Everyone is different, but every one of them has an executive director. And knowing that the executive director has 55% of their salary and benefits paid back by the state, we thought, why give somebody a stipend? So most of the service centers give a stipend to one of the superintendents to be the executive director. They might pay them $5,000. They're only recouping 55% of that $5,000. Whereas for us, we decided to give me a dual title, superintendent / executive director, so my entire salary and benefits is paid back by the state. None of the other directors do that.
At 55%.
At 55%. So it's kind of a cost savings just from your superintendent to think of it that way. So that's just one creative thing that we did in order to maximize on that. We also do get a small line in our state subsidy that gives us additional funds because we're part of this as well. And I don't remember how much, 115,000 I think,
It's,
or 40.
no, I'm thinking it's more like 50 or 60,000.
And 115 sounds better.
I'm not sure. Yeah. Numbers. Might be. I didn't know that.
You do have other areas in the state where this type of sharing happens. You have school unions. So I think of Mount Desert Island. You have not just one area, but you have some other areas where you have one superintendent overseeing 9, 10, 11 school districts. God bless them. They've done that under old umbrellas, the AOS system or the school union system, where they collaborate on administration, but they don't get the benefits that we get from this law, which pays us back some things like the financial system, like our power school for students, and the superintendent's salary and benefits at 55%. So kind of a good thing. Sharing superintendent it's not a new thing. They do it, in many areas, but the way that we do it under this umbrella is definitely unique.
So in return, you're taking on 2 roles?
Several roles.
Just 2?
Yeah.
Well,
When I'm
you're taking superintendent and the
Yeah.
new director of
Executive
director.
When I'm meeting with the Valley Unified Board, I am their executive director. I'm not their superintendent, because they don't have any students, right? The Valley Unified Board, they don't have any students, so they don't need a superintendent. They just need somebody to help manage all of the things that we share. When I come back here and work for you at SAD 27, I'm your superintendent. I'm not the executive director anymore.
When the ESCs or the Education Service Centers were created, or in concept, they were suggested that they could also be combined with, say, the town office and the districts, the school districts in a town, and become a central, but then they changed the tune when we said the 2 things do not mesh well together.
Crazy.
Yeah, it would have been crazy, because you're dealing with 2 completely different businesses, and they're run completely different, and your clients are completely different. So they've backed out. That's why they named it an executive director, because it wouldn't necessarily be just schools. Whereas now they've changed it so that you can have one just for schools.
Any
This
other
says
questions
the-
on that?
This says the second read. Is this the second time we've seen this?
No,
No,
the
they-
second at the Valley Unified level, they've seen it twice. Yeah.
They've seen it twice. And before they take it up for 3rd read, they wanted you to see it.
Any other questions on the Valley Unified budget? And we would entertain a motion.
And this would just be to show support if you so choose.
I'm comfortable making that motion if I can. I'm the representative to the Valley Unified Board, so I don't know. Does that
You've seen
matter?
it more than.
I've seen it more than everybody else.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I move to support the Valley Unified budget for 2024-25.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Tanya? All in favor? Any opposed?
Yes.
You're opposed?
Thank you.
So Sarah.
4. Okay, moving on to our budget workshop.
This is the easy budget.
This is never the easy budget. And you have those same documents, or very similar documents, kind of emailed to you.
Okay. Yeah, so the first email.
Thank you.
This is usually the point in time where we say, don't panic. It's only the first read, and, we haven't gone back to our budget creators and said, okay, we need to adjust A, B, C, and D. This is just based on primarily initial requests.
So the first step that I do for the budget is I gather everything together. So we get the schools to put in to kind of coordinate their requests from teachers, or what they feel they may need that I may not be aware of. I can't include something in a budget if I don't know that they actually need it, or I'd be guessing. So in November, I send out basically an all call and say, hey, start getting your budgets ready. and I get the schools, transportation, facilities, co-curricular, extracurricular, and then I build the rest. I'd also take all the current staff and positions that we have in this current year that are active or vacant, and I price them for next year. When the collective bargaining agreements are active, so that they're already in place that will cover next year, I can factor in the exact cost of what that's going to be. When they're not, then I put in a best guess and an estimate, and I put in an amount in the budget that will allow us to negotiate fairly. And that is included in here. So then I build it and I see how does it compare to next year, to last year, and where would we fall if we took it to referendum today, where would we fall? So in here you have the same budget presented in multiple ways. The very first sheet with the blue lines, that's basically what I call your super summary. That's your summarized budget by cost centers. By law, I have to present it within these cost centers to the Department of Education, where the first cost center is regular instruction. Regular instruction is what happens in the classroom. It includes your teachers, your ed techs that are assigned to a classroom, all your classroom supplies, all your curriculum, and those kinds of expenses. It also includes the gifted and talented section of the budget. And this year, in that section, there's an addition that was moved from continuing education to regular instruction. It's the alternative education program. It really serves the high school students. We used to put it in continuing education because we were able to get subsidized for those costs. So whenever we can get subsidized, that's where I'm going to put it. That's no longer the case. They've changed that rule or the allowability. So the costs, since we're not going to get any additional monies for them, we're putting them where they really belong, which is into regular instruction. So this is your super summary. On the right-hand side in the column, I've put a very brief description of what was the primary cause for the increase. So when I'm looking at this, I'd say it looks like we would be over by almost 1.2 million, which is 8.3% of the budget. Not unusual. I actually am surprised that it's as low. Some things a budget person never says. But this is, like Ben said, it's our first look. I've hopefully put everything in that I know of. I've put in estimates where I don't know amounts. I take a best guess, and then my next step is to go through each line in detail and say, okay, does this make sense? Did I factor it right? And as I go along in the budget process, I get a little more information. Then I get input from the principals and the directors as well, and say, okay, do you know that if you've put everything in, here's your chance to look at it again. I prepare them a report and say, please go over it again and see what. We also look at positions and say, okay, we're 1.2 million over. We may have to make cuts. Have your backup plan in place in case, which position do you really need and which position could you reduce or change or whatnot. So that's our first glance at the cost center level. The next sheet is a summary by category of expenses. It's the same information, but I've grouped it with all your salaries together, all your health insurance together, all your salary benefits, your social security, your retirement, so by groups of expenses that are very similar in nature and that belong, so that we can compare and say, okay, how much of this budget is salaries? So just salaries alone is about 56% of the budget. When you include all the benefits, 79% of your of your SAD 27 budget is salaries and benefits. So the rest of the budget is made up of things that you may not be able to do much about. For example, your utilities, your transportation. If you're still going to pick up the kids at home and deliver them to school, there's a cost to that I have very little manipulation to change. If you have to buy a bus, and the very last line, for example, is the cost of a bus. Last year, a bus would cost us almost $107,000. The projected cost is $114,000. So there's cost increases that there's really not much that we can do about. But this allows me to look and say, okay, well, where are my big changes this year? Where do I really need to dig deep and see, okay, are we spending do I have a projected 100% increase in furniture, for example, or and maybe I've duplicated a cost. And so this allows me a quick glance of where should I concentrate and take a second look. I'll do that anyways, but this is a quick glance at where I can dig deep. The third method is just digging a little deeper. So if it's the summary by program within cost centers. So this takes regular instruction and breaks it down within the little groups or programs within that. So each blue line ties back into this first sheet where you had the blue lines. The blue lines on here will be the same ones. So in regular instruction, we group it by elementary programs grades 3 to 6, elementary programs grades pre-K to 2, regular secondary education from grades 9 to 12. So by the Department of Education requires me to code all my salaries by where are they working. Are they working in middle school? Are they working at the elementary school? Are they are they a nurse? So I have to present it in a more detailed level and build my budget accordingly. So there again, I'm going to go and see where are my bigger changes and what is causing the increase or decrease. Because if I have a decrease of $100,000, I'm going to look to see, did I miss something, right? So that's, and again, I put notes on the right-hand side so that it'll tell you what the primary increase or reason for the change is.
You see the top line, is it grade 3 to 8?
Grade 3 to 6.
Where's 7 and 8?
7 and, no, I'm sorry, it is grade 3 to 8, yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
At the department level, the middle school is included in the elementary. Elementary,
Okay.
middle school is one area, and high school is its own area. And then in here as well,
Crazy,
on line, that same section below, the alternative education, that's where you're gonna see last year, there was no budget in that section, but this year there's 86,220 to capture the costs of the alternative education that were there. They were in the budget already, they're just in a different section of it. So when we're looking at continuing education, you would see a decrease of, not quite that much, but probably 80,000 from continuing education. I think that is pretty much the major change, like the shifts. The other thing that's changed this year is our ESSER funds, our COVID funds, are gone. So this is the year where we call the cliff. We no longer have the grant funding to cover positions that we were able to cover through that. We had at least 3 positions, I believe, that were in there. We had a nurse. We had a temporary support person, which is a full-time long-term sub. So wherever that person's needed, and that person's needed every day. So a sub, and then there was a integrator, literacy or instructional coach. So those positions have now been included in the regular budget. That's something that the administration and the superintendent will determine. Are these positions that we still need, or do we keep them, and what do we do with them? Those are the kinds of discussions that we...
And I do believe the literacy coach, we're gonna put under title funds, which is our state grant funds. So that's gonna fold under that umbrella, so it won't come at a local cost.
I think we have a portion.
You have a portion.
It's not 50-50, I think we have a dollar amount that we are able to put in a title fund. And so we try to get creative in that way. Can we get these positions funded in a different way before putting it to regular budget? But ultimately, we do have some positions that we put in the budget that were part of the grant funds last year. So the last one that's primarily all yellow is digging into even deeper. And now you're seeing in each little program, subcategory, you're seeing salaries, health insurance, salary benefits in that little section. So each section has it broken down by those categories of expenses. And then I had gathered all of those and created the ultimate super summary that had by categories of expenses. So if you were to take all the lines in that says total salaries, you would come up with a super summary total salaries. I will leave you you can take these home. I would appreciate them not being shared at this point, because they're not final, you still have not digested them at the board level. They're certainly not for, public consumption at this point. The next thing that I build is, so I build the expense side of the budget. That's what these 3 or 4 sheets were. Then I look at the revenue. So by law, I can't bring a budget to referendum without knowing where's the money coming from. I can't project, I can't go in not having identified where the revenues are going to come from and end up with a deficit. It's by law I have to come up with. So I look at every avenue of revenues that we collect or that we can invoice, such as tuition towns that come in, so the cost of tuition, the transportation, the special ed, anything that we could bill them for. I look at carry forward from prior year. What do I anticipate being able to put towards this budget? By law, whatever I carry forward, I've got 3 years to offset the next 3 budgets to reduce local taxes. I look at revenues from school lunch, continuing education, whatever we have that may have a carry forward. Then I take the amounts that we receive from the ED 279. So the ED 279 usually has two or three amounts in it that I can apply towards this. There's the state funds, and then there's the local required funds. So those are plugged in. So I go through and I identify all the areas of revenues that I can. And the very last number that I plug in, and you'll see it in the blue, it's highlighted in blue, and that's the additional local funds that we would need to go to the locals over and above what the local required amount would be. So what I'm looking at this year is the total local taxes that we would be 700. Now this is if we were going to referendum today. This is not the number that we're going to go with, but this is my first look at it. So
13% higher.
13.9% higher would be, if we were going to referendum today, that's what it would be, yes. And the last sheet would say, okay, what does that mean in terms of a mill rate? So the last sheet is the estimated mill rate, Tanya. So if we were to take that, that extra 700,000, so we would be going to the locals for 5,733,000, which is an increase of almost 700,000. It would increase the mill rate by 1.18. So that we usually try to keep it way under, as low as we can, but at least I don't know that we've gone over a mill for quite some time. This is, if we were going today, this is where it's our starting point. We're definitely going to analyze and try to reduce that. One of the things that, as we start the process, we don't know yet what the health insurance is going to be. We usually find that out in early April. And in the last few years, that's been a reduction. So that's one avenue. Today, I think, and what has not yet factored in is one of the grants that was due to expire or be done was the pre-K expansion grant. The Department of Education has basically informed us that there's an opportunity to extend that grant for another half a year. I don't have that factored in here yet, but I do have all the expenses in here. So that's another 66,000 that I can put in as anticipated revenue. That will reduce this mill rate.
When would you find that out? If you got that 10%?
Actually, we know that we can get it. We just have to put in the application and say, yes, we're interested. So I'm going to actually count that as an anticipated revenue for the next read. So usually those are the two big items, or the health insurance is a fairly big item. Sometimes the difference is $100,000, which would go a long ways towards reducing this to below 1 mil. So in this case, if you look on the left-hand side, each 1 mil is 400,483. So to reduce this by 1 mil, I'd have to reduce by $400,000 of expenses. each 0.1 mil. So in this case, if I reduce it by 80,000, I'd be below 1 mil. So I'm, pretty sure that we can get there, given that I know we can count on 66,000, and I'm hoping, we don't yet know what the health insurance is, but the last few years we've been lucky and we've been able to reduce. Other than that, we'll go through all the expenses and the salaries and whatnot and reevaluate whether or not the amounts that we have in the first read can be reduced. And I know that this is a lot to digest.
So if it's not approved today, you guys go back and try to.
I am not looking for
Okay.
approval today. No,
No.
not at all.
God.
No, we always have the first read.
Okay.
This is our first look to say, are we way off?
Right.
Because if we had come in at 3 mil, then we know that we have to plan something drastic. Like, that's when you really look and say, okay, no, like, we can't afford all of these positions, and we really have to get creative, and do we need to close a school, do we need to, those kinds of really top-level discussions need to happen. This is doable. This is basically telling us we're on the right track. We're not that far off that, we don't have to make any really drastic changes in combined grades or those kinds of things. So no, this is.
One thing that we discuss as an admin team, as Lucy's building this, and we're not seeing the numbers, because she's building it, is we're having conversations about, okay, have your plan A, which is what you proposed, have a plan B, which is essentially being able to cut between 10 and 15% of what you proposed, and then have a plan C, which is drastic, which is probably looking at positions in the event that we build a budget that comes out of whack. Luckily, this one did not come out of whack, so, we're hopeful that we don't have to go to the plan C, but we're likely gonna go to the plan B now and look at those, 10 to 15% cuts of where we can, not impact student learning.
One of the last places that we try to reduce is in the classroom. Because ultimately, what we are preparing our kids for is their future, not our past, right? So the way that we taught and that we were taught is not the way that these kids are being taught, and we have to be able to afford them the kind of experiences that they are getting with the Don Chenards of the world, right? That have the forefront thinking. And so if I go in and say, hey, we've never done that before, and I'm not putting that in the budget, it would not allow for that creativity to be able to happen. One of the discussions that I was having with one of the principals today is, say we have a school with 40 classrooms. If we only replace furniture in one classroom a year, it's going to take us 40 years to replace the furniture in our building, right? So we have to keep in mind that we can't do it all in 1 year, so we do have to do some of those costs and expenses that are gradual, but are necessary for us to be able to keep up with the costs of maintaining what we have. A bus is another item that we put a bus in the budget every year, when ultimately we should, to keep up with the replenishment of the buses that we need, we really need a bus and a third every year. Because buses are not replaced based on mileage alone. You're on but not driving.
Idle?
Your idle time is something that's not reflected in the mileage. So if you replace a bus at 150,000 miles, it's really driven probably 300,000 miles in terms of the motor usage. So those kinds of things are not something that your Joe Public is aware of, but our transportation manager and our Department of Education is really on board. Don't wait till your buses fall apart, because it's a long way to walk from Allagash.
Yeah.
And from St. Francis and from Wallagrass and whatnot. So we're building a budget for community buildings. We're building a budget for our students. So there's a lot of details that go into it. I try to make as many notes as I can. If you look at the line items, I've got at least 1,500 lines in my reports. This is summarized version. So as you're digesting this, if you have questions, feel free to kind of make a list and email it, and then I can have the answers at the next board meeting. That might help you kind of be able to go through it.
I don't know.
Or
if you-
sometimes if you just need an explanation of what is this, what's in this.
I don't know if you guys saw that line on this one right here. This document right here. And line 49. Lucy's coded it as new FMLA leave tax.
Right.
That's something brand new that was passed in the legislature that we have to start planning for. We have to start planning for, even though the details of what that law is totally gonna look like is still not quite ironed out. But essentially, starting with the 2025-26 school year.
In January of 2025?
Yeah.
January 1, we have to start collecting, we have to start, for each salary that we pay out, up to 1% of that salary must be collected for this new tax. So whether that's going to be cost share with an employee or if it's going to be all employer, that part has not yet been determined, but we've been told to plan for at least half a year to start collecting. It's going to be a family medical leave that will only start being effective or available in May of 2026. But they're collecting the funds for a year and 4 months before, to make sure that they have money to fund it at the state level.
It will be a paid family medical leave act, so unlike FMLA now, you can use your sick days, you can use your time. Once that's exhausted, you can still have FMLA protection, but at no, there's no payment to you, because you don't have anything, when this goes into effect, the employee will still have paid family medical leave at that point in time. And it's based on collecting from 1% from each employee and hopefully a shared cost from somewhere else.
Yeah, it's an expanded family, we already have a family medical leave for your own illness or the illness of your immediate family member or a service member or whatnot. This paid family medical leave will also extend to maybe a close friend or a close neighbor that you want to take time off to take care of if they're unable to take care of themselves.
And
So
I
it's an
believe-
expanded family
And I
medical leave.
believe a household pet will also qualify, is what we've been told.
Yeah, it's expanded.
For how long of a period?
We don't know yet.
So the 1% comes
From taxes?
well, but that 1%, so is it coming from the employee's salary? Like they'll just lose 1% from their salary, or no, you have to
Right now, the
add
law is
1%
written.
to their salary so that
The
it can be-
first draft of the law is written so that it's 0.5% from employer and 0.5% from the employee. But there's the way the language is written, it could be negotiated through collective bargaining agreement, that the employer would pick up the 1% or pick up a larger percent. So we have not negotiated that yet. It hasn't come up. It's come up in one of the collective bargaining agreements, but it wasn't dealt with until we see the final written version of that law. Fun times.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. That's all I have.
So now we would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?